Now, responding to the rumors of a delay in the start of the production of the 650,000 barrel per day refinery in Nigeria, an executive director for Dangote Group, Devakumar Edwin, says it's someone's wild imagination. Well, Edward Voelcker, advisor at Brigg Macadam London, joins me as we discuss developments in the oil and gas space. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Edward. Now, taking a look at that story, I believe, look, anything can delay or fast-track a project. Talk more of one that's actually expected to be Africa's largest refinery. Now, while we expect that to turn up either in 2020 or in 2022, my question is, how best can we turn around the narrative around the 450,000 barrel per day capacity that Nigeria owns before Dangote comes on board?
Well, that's an excellent question, and certainly NNPC and their restructuring in the last 2 or 3 years has been focused very heavily on trying to get the existing refineries to perform better. But I think it's been a struggle. There's also been mention of more mini or micro refineries, and the government put in some new procedures in place to encourage those to be built at various locations. But I don't think that's been taken up too much. So there's certainly a lot of dialogue in the area of downstream refining and how it will go. And of course, the Dangote one is the biggest and the largest. So let's hope that all three of these things play out, because I think they would be beneficial for Nigeria.
And do you really see any of that playing out or any of that dialogue continuing before the elections next year? I mean, at the moment, it's all about elections, and political bickering between both parties. What do you think should be their priority at this point, especially in Nigeria's oil and gas space?
Well, I'm a little bit hesitant to tell Nigerians what their government's priorities should be. I've spent excellent time in Nigeria, and I know different people have different thoughts on that. But encouraging transparency, encouraging good governance, encouraging good communication from the Ministry of Energy and any ministers, and getting ministers to work together. We all know no one ministry can make things happen. So just anybody who is able to make things happen and not just talk about it would be great. And of course, I encourage everybody, including journalists, when ministers come out and talk about the newest MOU they've signed or the newest initiative they've had, to really question how that will happen. And what that takes to happen is the financing in place and a variety of the other obstacles that get in the way of any of these large projects in Nigeria or in any developing economy.
Now, soon we get those answers, it's left for anyone's imagination. But at the moment, of course, Engina FPSO leaves by the end of the year. The question is, what's the next project for Lador? What's going to happen to the workers, that worked on that particular project?
Wonderful to see the Engina FPSO arrive at the start of the year, and a lot of value adding being done. And kudos to everybody involved in improving local content in Nigeria, certainly something that should have been going on 10 or 20 years ago. A really wonderful project to have there. But you raised the right question. What is the pipeline of future projects? Probably Shell's Bonga Southwest project will go ahead at some point in time. But lots of work to be done there. You have things like OPL 245, which has sadly been stuck in the courts about issues of ownership and things. That may come along in the future. And then, of course, we need to get the petroleum industry governance bill sorted out. A lot of work has been done to take one large bill that was proposed now 10 years ago and divide it into, I think at last count, 3 or 4 different bills. But they all need to work their way through the government processes. And as you've mentioned, as we're so close to the elections, just 6 months away, I don't know. It's going to be tough to see how the petroleum industry governance bill works itself out, which would encourage people to make these large capital investment decisions for Nigeria.
Well, just before we go global, let's go back to Dangote and the refinery. Of course, we understand the fertilizer plant, the petrochemical plant, and the main refinery are going to be together in one area. Any clear, status on any of these startups and where the energy is going to be coming from for that complex?
No, that's certainly been a discussion I've been having with many people. A lot of people don't want to talk about it, I'd say, on the record, but certainly Dangote and First Exploration and Production have formed a company, West African Exploration and Production, They certainly know that a lot of natural gas is needed at the site for the 3 different plants you nicely highlighted there. That, of course, is a project in its own. They're talking about this east-west offshore gas gathering system, a bit of a mouthful, that will run approximately from Ekit all the way to Lekki, which is 500 or 600 kilometers. Very expensive project, technically challenging, but of great use to everybody if that can happen. But I'm not clear, and I don't think many people are clear on the exact timing and if that will be the natural gas to fire all of the plants that you listed at Lekki, or if they have other thoughts for gas, including maybe something like the Aje field, which is just offshore Lagos and does have some gas. I would imagine they're talking to those partners as well.
And just in a nutshell, when do you think that project will be complete? Just from everything you've said and what you've read so far, what you've also observed, 2020 or 2022? What do you think?
I'm an upstream guy, not a downstreamer, so I'll leave the downstream refining questions to others who specialize in that. But when the energy supply will arrive, wow, that's going to be a tough one. It's an awful lot of natural gas that they need. Far from a source, so that's probably 2-3 years away as well. So how that all ties together, I'm not clear.
All right, then just a final question there on the U.S. sanctions. I mean, we're expecting by the 5th of November, all U.S. sanctions that were suspended by the JCPOA will be reinstated. Just in a nutshell, how bad is this going to impact on Tehran and the global oil markets generally?
Well, I think it certainly means that Iran, once again, has to work much harder to sell their oil. There always seems to be ways for people who will still buy oil, maybe at a discount or something. But that is a major issue. And of course, just today, the International Energy Agency came out and mentioned the issue of if there are general trade wars between large global powers, that can have a real effect on economies, and that can lower oil demand as well.